Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and I have as my guest today Alton West. And Alton is the Community Developmental Director for the City of LaGrange, and also the host of City Week.
That's right.
Yes, on LG 19. Welcome to the show, Alton.
Well, thank you very much, Wanda. It's a pleasure to sit down with you.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about your position with the City of LaGrange as the Community Development Director. What does that entail?
You know, and that's a good question, because people always, when you say community development, people think, well, what do you do? You know, I think that I have a very exciting job, a very I think important job as well, too, because when you talk about community development, you're thinking about all the things that go in to make up a community. But my job primarily basically is looking at any plans review for residential development, you know, commercial development, and even some light industrial development. We look at that. We have a staff that reviews that. A building official. We now have on board a city planner that is very instrumental in reviewing plans with me and the other staff members, making sure that things comply with the zoning, making sure that things comply with, you know, the other subdivision regulations. Because when you talk about community development, you know, all of us, we buy our homes, and when we buy that home, we see things around it, and some of those things may be undeveloped land, or it may be other homes, or it may be next to a commercial zoning. And we want to make sure that our investment is protected. So as a community development director, we make sure that people's property is not encroached upon by unwanted, unnecessary development. So for example, in your residential areas where you may have single-family homes, you would want industrial, like out in our Jim Hamilton or the Lucan Industrial, you would want industrial development coming right up to your back door to be built there. So therefore, we have various zoning districts that those things are allowed. You have your single-family residential home, you have your industrial places that industrial buildings can be built, and you also have your commercial zoning. So I have a very interesting job. Another thing that we do in my job is annexations. A lot of times people may come to us with land that they want to annex into the city for one reason or another. So we take it through the process of reviewing the letter that they submit to us. Then we have to take that before the mayor and council. If the mayor and council likes the idea of annexing that property into the city, then we will move forward, taking that to the Board of Planning and Zoning Appeals Committee.
Yes, and you've mentioned that we have a planner. Is that a new position?
That is a new position. I hired a planner almost a year ago now to the City of LaGrange, and basically, you know, I'm an administrator in my role, but to plan various things, you know, is kind of outside of my forte a little bit. So we brought on board a planner that can help, you know, me and the other staff members to kind of look at things from a holistic standpoint and say, okay, well, you know, we're planning this today, but what about future? How is this going to develop, and what should things look like for the future, 5 years, 10 years out?
Yes.
So we brought that a person on board, Lee Threadgill, who's doing a very good job. Like I say, she's been there almost a year now.
Yes, good. Let's talk about the TV show you do. It's called City Week.
City Week, that's right.
And how do you select the people that are going to be on City Week?
I beg a lot of times.
Do you?
I'm just kidding. I really, that's another thing that I guess that was just kind of, I'm not going to say dropped in my lap, but I was thinking about it. I think I've been doing that now for about 7 years.
Yes.
And I select my guests. I try to make sure that the show is very informative, first of all. I also want to try to keep it interesting, things that people can use, because I don't want it to be like, you know, all the other talk shows that you see. People come on and talking about their problems, this, that, and other. But I want it to be something that can benefit the community at large. My focus primarily is government, health, and education. So I try to mix it up as far as the guests are concerned, keeping it, you know, again, informative, keep it interesting, you know, pull from all segments of those categories that I mentioned, and try to make sure that, you know, people can come and make sure that they're not camera shy. A lot of times you find that people are very camera shy. I know people right there in my office. I said, well, I need you to come on and do, you know, a talk show with me one day. Like, oh no, I'm not going on that television, get on that camera. But it's interesting the way I try to go about selecting my guests.
Yes, and also it gives the people an opportunity to know what's going on in the city, and an opportunity to get involved if they'd like to.
Absolutely, because there's always an opportunity for citizens to get involved with their local government. I guess, before I got into local government, Wanda, I was probably like the general population.
Yes.
I want to go to work, don't tax me to death.
Yes.
Provide the services that I need, water, fire, and police, all those things. And other than that, kind of leave me be, But when you get involved with city government, you do find out there's a lot of things that go on to make the city run and operate in the efficient manner that we operate. Because, a lot of people probably are familiar with this term, that we are a full service utility provider.
Yes.
Whereas you go to other cities, they may get their electric from one service provider, water from someone else. But we're very fortunate here in the city of LaGrange that we are a full service utility provider. When you get your utility bill, everything is there on that bill: your water, your gas, your sewer, so on and so forth. And then we're also trying to help people to understand how they can control, the cost that they pay out every month for their utility bills. So, we're very fortunate in that fact, to be able to offer various things and assistance where needed be to those that may be, facing some financial difficulty.
Yes, and because of those services that are provided, LaGrange doesn't charge property tax.
That is correct.
So, which is a really good benefit for the citizens that live in LaGrange.
Absolutely. I think it's probably 16, 17 years now that the city of LaGrange has not had a property tax. But we want to be clear that people understand that they still have their county property tax, the school tax, and the state tax. But each year the city of LaGrange rolled back the millage rate to 0 so that there are no city property taxes at all because of the enterprises that we have in effect. Our telecommunications, our utility service system, our sanitation, just to name a few of those revenue generators that help us to raise the revenue that we need to fund those services such as fire, police, and other things of that nature. I can remember when we started the sanitation company, if you want to call it,
Yes.
LaGrange Sanitation, probably 9, 10 years ago, a little bit longer now. A lot of people were kind of, hesitant about the city of LaGrange going into that business, but now, I think a lot of people are more, that they're glad that the city of LaGrange, because now they have a service provider that's right here locally, that if they have problems or difficulty, they can come down to City Hall, they can pick up the telephone,
Yes.
they don't have to call someplace outside of the city to get answers to their questions or to get those services addressed or issues addressed that they have, concerns about.
Yes, and Alton, I wanted to ask you something about the guests that you have on your show. Are there some that were really just memorable guests?
Well, I like to think that all of my guests are memorable guests, but because they all bring something exciting and something new,
Yes.
and it's a learning, situation for me. So all of my guests, but I guess if I had to single out a particular guest, because I've dealt with kids over the years and course of time, I had one young lady that came on the show by the name of Sophie McDowell.
Uh-huh.
And Sophie, who's I think 12 years of age now, wrote a book called BB and Me.
Oh, wow.
And the book is about her grandmother, who's a quadriplegic, double amputee, and she was always, trying to help students to understand, that her grandmother was very special to her and is very special
Yes.
to her. So she wrote a book to kind of help children understand and adults understand what it means to be, an amputee and have all of your limbs removed.
Yes.
So she wrote a book to kind of help students to understand, and her grandmother would travel around the Troup County and surrounding areas to kind of talk about and to promote her book. And I thought at such a young age, to have the mindset
Yes.
to want to help people understand what it means, to have lost a limb, not just one limb, but all 4 limbs.
Yes.
To help them to understand that, and that when you look at that person, they're still just as much human as you and I.
Yes.
But unfortunately, they've lost their limbs. So I thought that really touched me in so many ways. And I got an opportunity to get Sophie she had some books there, and she autographed one for me. So if I had to say one guest that really stood out or stands out in my mind, I would just have to say it would be Sophie McDowell.
Yes, that's awesome. And being around people who have experienced any kind of handicap, that teaches you that they're just regular folks, and so it's really having that experience that allows you to know that hey, it's okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I'll also, before we go too much further, I want you to talk about your sons.
Oh,
I know you
goodness.
adopted two sons. I want you to tell how that came about and your experiences with that.
Well, you know what, and it almost didn't come about, wanted to be quite honest with you. I can remember it was back in 1997, I believe it was, and I was down at City Hall, working there at City Hall, and Joan Sheffield, who was the HR manager at the time, was on the board of directors for the Georgia Sheriff Pineland group home here in Troup County. And she was looking for someone to mentor two young men that were there at the group home. And she came to me one day and she says, well, there's two guys out that we're looking for a mentor for. And she knew that I did the DARE program.
Yes.
And she said, we're looking for a mentor for these two guys. Great young men, da-da-da. You know, she went on and on about it. I was like, okay, Joan, I'll think about it. As a matter of fact, I was getting ready to leave the country. I was going to Vancouver, Canada, so I had no intentions of adopting kids.
Yes.
No intention we even want to talk about kids because I was getting ready to go on vacation. And I told her, and she said, well, okay, when you come back from vacation, maybe let's set up a time, you know, we go meet him. I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever.
Yes.
And my thing, because I'm in vacation mode. So I went away on vacation for a couple of weeks and came back. And to be quite honest, I was hoping she had forgotten about it because I did. But I came back and, you know, a little after I got back in and everything, she came to me again. She said, well, Alton, she says, what I did, I went ahead and set up an appointment for you to go out and meet the guys if you don't mind. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. And so I did. I agreed to go out to meet the guys and went out and I met them. And the guys are biological brothers.
Yes.
I went out and met them. Two really nice kids. I mean, just adorable guys. You know, we talked. I met the group home director and some other kids there and everything. And one thing just led to another.
Yes.
So, you know, from that I started, you know, having him over for weekend visits. You know, I became a foster parent.
Yes.
Went through the MAP training and everything. From fostering them, I went to more weekly stays with them being able to come and to stay in the home with me and everything. And then I got to thinking about it. I'm like, you know, because I had taught with them so much, and one of the kids, one of my sons at this, well, he was a foster kid at that time, but one of the things that he said to me that really touched me and made such an impact and made me help me to make that decision to adopt was the fact, he says, you know, it was during Christmas one year, and they would go to other parents and families that would take them in during the time, and he said to me, he said, Mr. Alton, he said, I just want to get somewhere where I can be settled.
Yes.
And when he said that to me, I was like, oh my goodness. That was almost like a ton of bricks just being dropped on you, and I'm like, oh my Lord. So from that statement that Mark made, it made me and helped me to make the decision that, you know, maybe we need to be a family where they don't have to be continuing to be transitioned back and forth.
Yes.
So from that, we started the process. At the time, you know, to adopt teenagers, there were not a lot of families looking to do that, not a lot of single men, I'm pretty sure, doing that. So unfortunately, we did have to terminate parental rights of the mother. We did do notification of the father, whom the boys had really never known or hadn't seen in years. We got no response back from the father. So upon the termination of mother's parental rights, we were able to move forward with the adoption. And the adoption took place on February the 14th in 1998 on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So that was a remarkable time.
And they were how old?
At that time, they were 10 and 12. There was about 4 months that they're 2 years apart.
Yes.
And then, because my oldest is now 31 and the youngest is 29, but he'll be 30 in April.
Yes, and you're granddaddy now.
I am a pawpaw.
Pawpaw.
I am a pawpaw, that's correct. I am a pawpaw of 3 times. My oldest son, he and his wife have 3 kids. Daniel, Carlos, and Carl III.
Yes.
7, 6, and 4, and I'm gonna tell you, they are a handful.
Yes.
To be exact.
How did that change you, Alton?
You know, Wanda, because I always like to think that I'm one that's very energetic and all over the place. You know, just to hear them, and it's so ironic you asked that question because the last time that I was up, and the boys were just there crawling all over me, Papa, 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 and my oldest son, he said, Dad, how does that make you feel for the boys to be calling you Pawpaw? And I told him, I said, well, you know, Carl, until you're in that position, you just can't fully understand it. but it really makes you, I mean, think, you got these little individuals that are counting on you,
Yes.
that look up to you. When I go to the home to visit them, you hear them, Papa, Papa, and they, the kids, they run up from downstairs and they jump up in your arm. There's no feeling in the world, that can describe how you feel about that. But I mean, to know that they're dependent upon you,
Yes.
and to know how much they love and care for you, and it's a mutual thing, it has really, humbled me even more so to know that, I've got to be the very best that I can be for them and for myself first, so that I can be the very best for them.
Yes. And where do your sons live?
My oldest son, he and his wife live in Mableton, which is right there next to Six Flags, and they're about 40 minutes from me.
Yes.
And then my oldest son, my youngest son, he and his wife don't have any children, and they're about 15 minutes away from my oldest son.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, they're very fortunate to have you in their life as a father and a grandfather, and I know you're fortunate to have them in your life also.
It has been a blessing both ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're from here, right, Alton?
This is home for me.
Yes.
Yeah, LaGrange is home for me.
Yes.
I grew up right here. I always I'm a country boy. Graduated from the original Troop High School on Whitesville Road. But yeah, this is home for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And I know that you also were involved in Big Brother, Big Sister.
Yes.
Tell me how you got involved in that, and tell me about your experience there.
I guess people look at me and they say, he's one that can't say no to anything. So that's why I get asked to do various things, I think. I, again, from the adoption of my kids to even from my very own nieces and nephews growing up over the years, they always knew that Uncle Al was the one who was not the necessarily disciplinarian one, but Uncle Al just didn't take a whole lot of foolishness, because Uncle Al was also a police officer for a number of years too. But even from my nieces and nephews, I've always been around children and kids throughout my life. I have 7 nephews, 6 nieces, and then I have extended nieces and nephews as well. That I've always tried to be there in a positive manner for them, teaching them that if you, invest in yourself, number one, get an education,
Yes.
Having respect for yourself and then others. Do anything that you can do, and when you need assistance and help, ask for it. But always have kids around. But then, there's organizations in our community that also need help. They always need positive male role models.
Yes.
And Big Brothers Big Sisters is one of those organizations. I think at last time that when I went to a board meeting, we probably have somewhere like 60 waiting littles that need someone as a role model, big brother or a big sister. But again, the organization started over in the Dash office where I used to work.
Yes.
Some years ago. Ted Beeson and the group from Columbus came up, and they started the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization there. We've gone through some changes and stuff of that nature, but about 5 years ago, I was asked to become a big brother to a student kid that was in the waiting, and again I kind of hesitated about it, hoping that they would forget.
Yes.
But I guess when the calling is on your life, then you just can't.
That's right.
You just can't get away from it. So I went over to the office and everything, and they have, you do a match. You try to pick a kid that's kind of compatible to your likes, dislikes, so on and so forth. So I went and did the match, and then they matched me up with a kid, and I got an opportunity to meet the kid, and it just so happened that my little brother is the son of one of my DARE students from years ago.
Oh, really?
He was the son of one of my DARE students. And when she saw me and I saw her, she said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad it's you."
Oh, yeah.
She was so relieved. So he and I, Carleek, my little brother, he and I have been together now 7 years, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, 7 years.
Yes.
Yeah, 7 years. So, there again, you never know how much you impact a child during the time that you're doing it. Is after the fact, a lot of times they'll come back and say, well, Mr. West or Officer West or whatever the case may be, you may not remember when you said this, but I remember that, and that always stuck with me.
Yes.
And it made a big impact on my life.
Yes, and Alton, I just want to say, it's not because you can't say no, it's because of your character. And when people look out into the community and they look for somebody who can mentor a child, then you come to mind. So it's character based.
Thank you,
That's what it is.
Thank
okay,
you.
and you were the Grand Marshal of the Sweet
Sweet Land of Liberty Parade.
Yes, and you had worked with Annette Boyd before that.
That's right.
Tell me how that happened and what that meant to you.
Oh my goodness! There again, you know, you never know who's watching you. I guess you never know who's watching you. You never know the impact that you make on a person's life. You never know the extent of, you know, what you think you're doing go beyond just that little square that you may be in, a circle or whatever. But yeah, some years ago, not some years, I think about 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, I was asked to be the Grand Marshal of the Sweet Land Liberty Parade. And again, Katie Harrelson, a person was the chairman at that time, one of my DARE students from days of old, asked me if I would consider being the Grand Marshal. And I asked, I said, well, why me? Because there are so many persons in our community that's deserving of the Grand Marshal title position. And she said, you know, all the things that you've done over the years for kids, and the parade is about kids.
That's right.
And, you know, with her saying that, you know, again, there's no way that you can say no to that. It was an honor for me to be asked to be the Grand Marshal for the Sweet Land of Liberty Parade. You know, having worked with Annette Boyd over the years, you know, Jim Boyd, her husband. I can remember back years ago, Annette and I would do a fundraising event for Gardner Newman Middle School. And you know, and we just clicked together and worked so well together, and it was an honor for me to be the Grand Marshal in something that she started years ago.
Yes.
To celebrate our kids, and also to celebrate our birthday of our independence for the 4th of July parade.
And had you been involved in the parade, actual parade planning before with Annette, or?
Not so much on, you know, the planning aspects of it, but I had participated in the parade over the course of years. I remember one year I had some of my DARE students in the parade.
Yes.
I can remember Sue Olson at the time, Matthew Olson, her son was in it, and not to start naming names, but I can remember Sue telling me, Matthew told us, I've got to be in the Sweet Land of Liberty Parade, and she remember rushing, trying to making sure that he got there on time. So we'd always participated by having the kids come out and walk in the parade as well.
Yes. Now let's talk about you being a DARE officer.
Oh, goodness.
You started with the police force first. Tell me how that developed.
Well, I started with, now, police force, it was not happenstance. I needed a job badly at the time. I can remember when I came back home from, I used to live in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes.
When I graduated college, I moved off to Baltimore, Maryland for a time period. And I just tell people, I'm a country guy. I'm a country boy. I love the country. I love being able to be out in the, you know, the open air, the green space, the wood trees, so on and so forth. So I moved back home from, I'm going to tell this little story.
Okay.
I can remember my first night in Baltimore, Maryland. The police helicopter flies over and is shining the spotlight, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? So I'm like, it's time for me to get out of here.
Yeah, I got to go back to
I got to get back to, absolutely. So I moved back home, and I started with the police department in 1988. And was there as a patrol officer, and then later on got promoted up to the training division. And it was there that I came across the DARE program. Sergeant Randy Dye at the time brought to my attention a program that had started out in Los Angeles, California under Chief Darrell Gates, that is kind of spread across the country now. Changed names and changed the curriculum somewhat, but it was called, at the time it was called DARE, Drugs to Resist, DARE, to keep kids off drugs.
Yes.
And Jeff Sargent and myself were introduced to it, and Randy asked us if we would be interested in going to get trained on the program, so on and so forth. And we looked at it and said, well, why not? And so we went off to Durham, North Carolina that year and got trained on the program. I'm going to tell you, this training was one of the most intense trainings that I've ever gone through.
Yes. To
be honest with you, because when you put on the uniform as a police officer, you're the tough guy, you know, dun 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 dun, I got my badge, I got my gun, I take you off to jail. But this training broke down everything that we knew about being a police officer, to being the bad guy, the rough guy, the tough guy, and all those things. To say the least, upon their graduation, there were some grown men and women, myself included, there crying like babies.
Wow.
Okay, that's how intense the training was. And to take it a step further, to get to the point, Jeff Sargent and I came out as most outstanding students in this training. So the two of us that left from LaGrange came back as the most outstanding students. And we had a class of 30.
Wow.
We had a class of 30.
Yes.
So, that just speaks volume to, I guess the caliber of men that we were, and also to show our, just wholeheartedness into it. But for 5 years, I was the dare officer in the LaGrange school system, because this was prior to the school consolidation. I was the dare officer in the city of LaGrange school system. We taught classes in kindergarten. Our primary course was taught in the 5th grade. And I would like to think that I touch and impact hundreds of lives over that course of time. A lot of my students now are in their mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, and I see them and hear them, come back and say, I remember you, Officer West, when you did this or when you said that.
Yes.
And a lot of them still refer to me as Officer West. And I would always tell the kids that I was there for their benefit. You do the right things, keep yourself drug-free, invest in yourself, and again, life has a lot to offer you.
Yes, it does. And it seems like to me, you're talking about the tough policemen and those kinds of things. And it seems like to me that over the years, I've come to know police officers as different than I did growing up. Used to, when we would see a police officer, my daddy might be speeding or whatever, and it's like, oh, there's a police officer. So it's kind of a tense thing. There's a police officer.
That's right.
But now the emphasis is really on community.
That's right.
And being there for the community and being a help. And so the police officer is not something that you are afraid of. It's someone that's there to help you through hard times.
Absolutely.
We have just a couple of minutes left,
Okay.
Alton, and I'd like for you just to tell us a little bit about who has influenced your life.
Ooh. There's been so many people, I guess, that influenced my life. And, of course, you always got to say family.
Yes.
I have to start out with my mother and my grandmother. And I think my grandmother and my mother as well have both been a great influence in my life. And people sometimes, they watch my show, they hear me reference my grandmother. Because I am very blessed to have my grandmother of 97 years
Wow.
still living, lives at home alone.
Yes.
Is able to, do for herself. And I think my grandmother has been a very big influence in my life over the course of time. And I still go by and like to have lunch with her, because, when I sit down with her, I say to myself, I should have a tape recorder.
Yes.
Because I'm missing so much of the history of my family that will never be gained again if we don't record it.
Yes. And that is so important. You don't realize it's important until they're gone.
That's
and
right.
You don't have anybody to ask about those questions.
That's
Sometimes
right.
when we're young, we're not particularly interested in that, but once they're gone, that history is gone.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
it is important. And Alton, I just want to thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank
and
you.
Your life has truly made a difference here in Troup County, and we're so glad that you are a resident in our county.
Well, thank you very
And
much.
I'd like to thank everybody for watching today. You make the difference, and remember, your life makes the difference.
Got a promise from heaven. It's a year of replevin.